Hi, I'm Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group, joined today by Marcus Cree, VP of Risk Solutions at SunGard. What we're here to talk about today is some of the challenges facing the pension fund market. A lot of pension funds are facing funding issues, shorter durations. That's forcing them to change the way they look at their portfolios and the way that they think about risk. Marcus, from what you've seen out there in the market, when a pension fund realizes that they have this problem and realizes that they've got to think about their portfolio in a new way, how do they begin that process?
What we have to do is to take a look back at how traditionally and how currently most pension funds would report.
Right, so the old benchmarking, factor modeling,
Exactly.
Take a bunch of managers, measure them against each other and do allocations, right?
Exactly, and then you allocate to managers around that. Now, as you come to a point where you want to catch up on your funding, you actually you've got a liability stream, you've got a benchmark, you've got to outperform the benchmark to maintain yourself with your forward liability stream. So that now requires taking some additional risks.
Right.
You could just look back and say, well, I'm going to give more of the fund to the highest performing manager.
Well, that doesn't usually work out over time, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't, absolutely. Right. And it poses all sorts of problems about how you're defining performance. Is it
right.
absolute? Is it relative to a benchmark? So instead, what we're seeing is a growing interest and a growing trend towards adopting what you could call traditional sell-side measures, VaR Shortfall, which is the tail risk of the VaR,
right.
Being applied in what's called active risk and risk budgeting for those funds. And we're seeing a big move towards that at the moment.
But how do they reconcile this factor, benchmarking process that they used to go through, and now this shift towards active risk?
The questions which they're trying to answer are twofold. One is, what is the risk of my benchmark? And what is the risk of how I have allocated to my managers relative to that benchmark? Am I taking more or less risk than is inherent within the benchmark?
Right.
Now, because I'm naturally trying to catch up my funding level, I have to take more risk. And because I have to take more risk, I have to have some way of measuring that risk profile.
Yep.
So I need to scale up my benchmark to be equal to my portfolio. I need to look at each of my underlying benchmarks and run those risk figures so I get one relative to the other. That's going to give me what my perfectly managed fund is looking like. That's my first question. Am I taking more or less risk than my benchmark?
Right.
And is that commensurate with my objective?
Yep.
My second question is, are my underlying managers relative to their benchmarks catching up, taking more or less risk? Are they using derivatives? Are they using illiquid assets? Are they actually investing from the benchmark? Those are the big questions, because if they are off benchmark.
And you would agree that in order to take more risk, in order to catch up with their funding gap, that they're likely to invest in managers that are investing in derivatives, less liquid assets, so forth. Is that true? Is that a trend you're seeing?
Increasingly, yeah. Because what we're seeing is that there's less risk in derivatives now. That's being de-risked by the various regulatory changes.
The bilateral, counterparty risk.
The counterparty risk that's being de-risked,
yep.
And it's a good way to play catch up with the funding. Now, you have to be quite cautious. We all know there's been, derivatives can blow up on you, but they are a way of increasing your risk profile,
right.
And therefore your return profile. But what they do is make the factor modeling, the more traditional modeling, very difficult to do, because that's inherently expecting that what you're investing is somehow closely related to the benchmark.
So I guess in a way, it's really hitting me now, and it's the title of the video, so it shouldn't come to me as a surprise that they really need that ability to look at their portfolio from that risk perspective in order to enable the strategy, the portfolio strategy they need to catch up on their funding.
Exactly, yeah. And that really is the driver. The funds that we're looking at that want to take this on, they've got to. There's a few issues to overcome to get there, but their end objective is to put risk at the strategic table, to make the taking of risk and the relative taking of risk, and how to allocate that risk. Classic risk budgeting. How do I allocate the excess risk that I want to take across my managers?
Right.
If that's their end goal, if that's their objective, then risk budgeting and active risk is what they're looking to do, which is to bring those sell-side measures in alongside their traditional measures and just see for a while how predictive
Right.
the sell-side measures are of those performance and of those risks, and slowly educate internally to start setting those targets and setting those boundaries around those relative risk numbers.
I mean, it sounds to me like pension fund. The other challenge for the pension funds is going to be to get all of the necessary data to actually do this analysis.
That's a
I mean,
significant
they don't.
issue.
I mean, most. As we both know, most of pension fund money is allocated to external managers, so they don't even have all of the necessary data internally in order to run this. Are they able to? I mean, I guess the managers just have to agree to provide this data, but even then, it's probably not easy to get it all into one system that's able to run these calculations.
It's not easy. I wouldn't say necessarily you'd get it from the individual managers. Quite often, you're going to go through your custodian bank to get your positions rather than your individual managers.
Yep.
And equally often, you might want to source your own data or go to wherever you go for the metrics, ask them to source that data for you to fill the system so you have a clean set of data. Good risk requires that you understand the data, requires that the data is good. And so therefore, it's unlikely, it wouldn't be best practice to rely on the people who would be being policed by the risk system.
Well, that's true. We probably learned
data.
that lesson a few times. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Marcus Cree, VP of Risk Solutions from SunGard. Thank you for joining us today on TabbFORUM. This is Adam Sussman, Director of Research at TABB Group.